pass on to Richard to get the meeting started. Thank you very much, everybody.
Libby, thank you ever so much, and good morning, everybody. It's really nice to reconvene at the start of October. Sun's shining, and it's just a great opportunity for us to reconvene and to really think about how we continue with our dialogue, our knowledge sharing, and ensuring that we're creating the right platform for us to collaborate across the city region and with key stakeholders. Of course, we're all aware that with the ongoing pandemic, it's causing us in our personal and business lives many challenges and to some extent opportunities. And it's one issue that we need to continue to think about how we work together to support the economic recovery. And we'll hear a little bit more from colleagues through the course of this morning as to the work that we're both doing and how we might engage and share knowledge across those areas. As an organisation, we continue to contribute in many different forums and through many different aspects to the work that's going on in the region, whether that's with the WECA Economic Task Force or the Bristol One City Growth and Economy Board, or with North Somerset and their proposals. And it's important that we continue to contribute and also join the dots up, and we'll hear particularly with regards to the Economic Task Force through WECA from Stephen a little bit later on this morning. And for our part as well, we are using our platform Trading Through Coronavirus to continue to provide a single source of information for members, and that's proved historically over the last 6 months to be very important. We'll hear a little bit more about how we're pivoting to bring that back to life from Victoria and Nina shortly. I think as well as the issues around the pandemic, there are many other issues that are really important in our work, whether that's dealing with climate change and the challenges of transitioning to zero carbon, the ongoing issues around equality and supporting those who are more disadvantaged and creating a fair economy. There are many aspects of our work that continue to engage across those different policy areas. Now, we also know, really importantly, that for many people, the travails of the pandemic are causing many issues, both in terms of their well-being and health. I know in my own organisation, when we heard that the recommendations were to generally avoid working from an office if you can, were announced last week, that caused a real sigh of discomfort for many. I think they were really starting to, colleagues were starting to enjoy coming back to the office environment. And actually, that's an ongoing issue as we run into the winter, that many of our colleagues and many of us are feeling many different stresses and strains. And it's really incumbent on us as leaders to think about how we can engage with our colleagues and to support each other actually in those issues. And I'm really pleased to say that Business West have been working again with the Combined Authority on how we can create the right support tools for us as business leaders to work with our colleagues. And again, Victoria and Nina will talk a little bit more about the Thrive initiative, which is something that's a really helpful asset for us all to be aware of. So without further ado, I just want to say thank you for joining us, and I shall move on now to introduce Victoria and Nina, our initiative managers, to talk a little bit more about our work. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Richard, and thank you for joining us. As you can imagine, it's continuing to be a very busy time for us, supporting businesses and communities across the region. So we're continuing to answer a lot of questions from concerned businesses on a range of issues. So, for example, on the furlough scheme, the new government support scheme, and the Kickstart scheme. And as Richard said, we're sort of shifting our activity now, looking at the economic recovery work. So working with some of the partners that you can see on screen now. So Bristol One City, WECA, the Western Gateway Partnership. And the aim is for our region to develop a coordinated response to ensure essentially that we have a strong and consistent message to government. So my colleague Nina will be touching on that in a little bit. But as ever, we want to ensure that Chamber and Initiative members are kept up to date with what's going on, you're fully supported, and you're able to best get involved as well. We're always very keen to hear from you if you feel you have expertise in a particular area that we could be utilising, or if you would like to get involved in any of the recovery work. then please do get in touch with James, myself or Nina. We'd be very happy to hear from you. Next slide, if that's all right, Mark. So with that being said, with the pandemic impacting UK businesses and obviously the B word, Brexit, coming in a few months, we're delighted today to launch our new Back to Business campaign. So essentially, it's to help businesses within the region and within the Southwest as a whole to improve their business resilience and to adjust to a changing landscape. So we're continuing to provide advice and guidance, including, free support from frequently asked questions. We have support from employment lawyers that we can access. And we also have a range of business support services and opportunities designed to help you essentially get back to business. We appreciate there are some sectors that are struggling more than others as well. So arts, culture, media, hospitality, etc. We are focusing a lot of our sort of lobbying and representation work on those sectors as well. So the idea is to communicate a positive message, essentially. So we want to give you practical resources to ensure that your business can thrive and recover as best you possibly can. So that includes things like support with the Kickstart campaign. So Business West, we're now an accredited provider of the Kickstart support. So if you're looking at taking on a younger person within your business, or you want support in apprenticeships or how to access the new government support, then we have a team dedicated to help you do that for free. So it's essentially curating the wide range of relevant support that we have at Business West in order to sort of culminate it into a new campaign to help you. So we're going to be looking at Brexit and COVID impacts as well. So next slide, if that's all right, Mark. So I think Richard touched on it. As many of you know, Business West, we've been going through the process of becoming one of only 2,500 companies globally to become an accredited B Corp. That essentially means we legally have to consider our business impact on the planet and people, as well as our not-for-profit entity as well. So we'd like to think that we do that already, but we're looking to become accredited in this region as well. So we'll be sharing our, update on that. Any best ways of practice and best ways of becoming a responsible business as well. So we'll keep keeping people up to date in our journey through that as well. So I'm going to be handing over now to my colleague Nina, who's going to be talking through some of the economic recovery work we're leading on in the region. Thank you.
Thanks, Victoria. So I'm just going to take a few minutes now and just give a quick run through of the work that we've been doing with our One City partners, specifically looking at the economic renewal and recovery strategy. So just switching slides, please. Can the next slide, thank you. So since the start of the pandemic, the One City Economy Board, which is led by James Dury and Deputy Mayor Councillor Craig Cheney, it's been meeting far more regularly. So at the start, we were meeting once a week, and we now meet every couple of weeks. It's a chance really of bringing all of the business support organisations and sector groups across the city. And I'm really delighted that so many of our members are part of this group. It's been really valuable during this time. It's been a chance to really share some of the personal challenges that some of these organisations are going through, but also what's happening within the sector. And by having that sort of cross-sector and city-wide perspective, it's meant that we've been able to get a real handle on how the city's been impacted and how the economy's been impacted in the city, and how different sectors or different organisations can come together and support each other. So there's been bits of lobbying that's come out in response to some of the initial government support projects, but we quickly then pivoted to start looking at the longer term impact of what's happening, and how as this group we can sort of set the direction for how we want the city to recover economically. So the way that we did that is that we've done a huge amount of engagement with various sectors, business interest groups across the city, and essentially we were asking two questions. We were asking them, how would you want the city to recover and rebuild? And what does that sector, that particular business group need in order to recover and rebuild from a pandemic? Can I go to the next slide, please? Let's wait for it. So next slide. So there we go. So what came out of that was then the statement of intent. This really was to articulate then everything that we were finding out from members of our group and all our engagement. And it really highlighted where the key areas of risk were within the business economy. It really pointed out as well that there are different groups of different industries that were being more impacted by the pandemic. And that included BAME residents, young people, the tourism sector, hospitality and event sector. And then it made a commitment then to make sure that we were able to work with our partners across the region then, and making sure that we were considering things like what came out important was that we wanted to be facing the future risks of climate change, equality of access of opportunities and the sustainable development goals. So it really articulated where we wanted the recovery to go. Have the next slide, please. So the next stage of the process is developing the economic recovery and renewal strategy. It's been under consultation for the last 2 weeks and it's due for publication later this month. So it's been focused on the people and labour markets, business and investment and place. And we've been working very closely then with the other local authorities and WECA as well to make sure that we are all aligned so that we have a clear voice to government and to funders into where we want investment and where we want interventions to happen in this place. Obviously, what's happening, the pace of change in the city and the economy it's very rapid. Quite aware of the challenges faced over Christmas and over the winter and with Brexit. So the strategy will be looked to be refreshed again in March in the next 6 months. Can I have the next slide, please? So there'll be a couple of different opportunities for everyone to engage with the strategy. On the 15th of October, we'll be sending over the links for you to be invited to these. We are partnering up with One City and the Festival of Ideas, and we'll be doing an event looking at the next 6 months, the pandemic and Brexit. The strategy itself will be then launched on the 16th of October. And then during the Festival of Economics, we'll be holding a panel discussion where we will have an opportunity to delve a bit deeper then in what the strategy means to everyone in the city. Okay, can I have the next slide? And I just want to touch a little bit on some of the other campaigns that we are currently working on. So Cycling Works is something that we have partnered with, and there are 38 businesses across the city that have joined in this, and they represent 20,000 employees. Essentially what we're campaigning for is for safer commuting across the city, so a continuous bike lane that goes across north, south, east, west of the city and improve parking infrastructure. And then the other campaign that we're working on, which Richard mentioned before, was the Thrive. So we're part of the working group to set this up. What's quite frightening is that only 13% of line managers have support I feel that they have the training to support people through mental health, and yet 70% of them say that it's an important skill in knowing how to support workers. Well, I think everyone's aware that employees are going to face massive challenges adjusting to working from home and everything else that's been brought along with the pandemic. So this is a free resource. It provides training. There's a resource for all companies to do it, and then there's an in-depth training then for SMEs. And we urge everyone to consider using this and consider embedding sort of better mental health practices so that we're more resilient through this pandemic over the winter. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Victoria. That was a really helpful, comprehensive update, so I really appreciate that. I would now like to welcome back to this group Sally Hogg, who is a consultant in public health at Bristol City Council. I know that you and your teams with Christina and others do some fantastic work, and I just want to say a big thank you. But Sally, you're just going to bring us up to speed with what's happening in Bristol and the wider city region. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and hello, everybody. So a quick update on where we are this week. As you can realise, it changes very fast, and what I say today might not be right tomorrow, so just bear that in mind. We at the moment have 21.4 cases per 100,000. Now we measure everything in per 100,000 so that we can compare anywhere across the world really, and with ourselves. That's higher than the last week, but in terms of the rest of England, England is at about 56.6 now per 100,000. And just to give you a quick comparison, Newcastle is 257.8, Liverpool is 260.1, and Knowsley is 264.1. And I think that shows you why they are in total lockdown and we're not, nor do we want to get there. And the other really good piece of news, I guess, really is that we haven't had any deaths at all in this last week or so. So, you know, that shows that what we're doing is under control at the moment, and that's the way we want it to stay. We are all working incredibly hard to make that happen, and we're interrogating this data and every thing that comes into the council and the NHS and to our duty desk with great detail to try and keep that at bay. So I think that's really important. In terms of the Southwest, we are one of the lowest, we have one of the lowest R numbers in the country. Ours is between 1.1 and 1.4. When it goes under 1, we know we're shrinking back with the virus. As it goes up, we know we're increasing. And it basically means that once you get to 1, you infect one other person if you're out and about, and that's how it's measured. Testing and our test and trace has been a huge issue right the way across the country. We're really asking people only to go and be tested if they've got symptoms, and that's because in the last 7 days in this area, only 1.2% of tests have been positive. That's 1 in 83 people. So lots of people are still going because they feel that they just want to check, or they're going as a whole family, and for various other reasons. But if I could just ask you to get that message out there, to just go if you've got symptoms, then we should all get an appointment if we need one. And all of the test centres in Bristol are appointment only. So that's Victoria Rooms car park and Netham Park, both of which are walk or cycle in, and then Bristol Airport, which is a drive-through. And it is important because they just aren't accepting people popping in. And I think just to say the NHS Test and Trace app is there now. They're encouraging people, all of us, to sign up to that. And it means you can use the QR code to check where you've been, and to enable other people to be contacted if you test positive. And then lastly, just remember that we are determined that the Bristol rates won't get to those that are in other parts of the country. But in order to do that, we've all got to play ball, every single one of us. We've all got to keep to the rule of 6, to remember the hands, face, and distance, space. We really need your help in this, and we are very, very thankful for the fact that everybody is so committed to this, and we feel a real sense that everybody wants us to stay in this place. So thank you.
Sally, thank you. And I just want to just reiterate that we've got, you know, a series of partners on the call today, from James at First Bus, John Smith from Avon Somerset Police, and the unitary authorities. And I know that everybody across the system, including the NHS and public health professionals, are working really hard to keep us in a safe state. But we all, of course, have our own personal responsibilities. So, Sally, thank you very much, and to partners, we really appreciate the work that you're doing. So I'm going to now hand over to Stephen Bashford, if I may. Stephen is the Director of Business and Skills at WECA, and Stephen's going to give us an update in terms of the regional recovery. So Stephen, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me, and I hope everyone's well. I'm just going to spend 5 minutes talking about the regional recovery and the task force in particular, but I won't be able to do it full justice in 5 minutes. So this is just a taster, if you like. So a bit of background on the regional recovery task force. Mayor Tim Bowles was asked to convene a regional recovery by the Prime Minister, with a clear purpose around supporting our recovery and renewal following COVID, to bring together a whole range of partners across the region to develop a coordinated response, but also to, really importantly, have some consistent messages going back to government, particularly at the early stages of the pandemic, when there was a need to give an evidence-based view of what's happening in the region and how government support can align with that. So the key responsibilities of the task force were to look at challenges, but also opportunities as well to build back better, to use the government's phrase, but particularly around how we support businesses, their adaptation in the new landscape, rapidly changing landscape as we know, but also to support people in terms of accessing employment, skills and training, given the significant shift in the labour market. But a whole range of people have been involved. Great to see so many on the call today. The Local Enterprise Partnership, a range of businesses, business sectors, local government, education. It was a significant effort to get a real feel for how COVID was playing out across our regional economy, and to identify some of those challenges and opportunities going forward. There's more on our website about the task force membership, so I won't dwell on that now. If you could go to the next slide. Where we are now is we have a recovery plan, a draft recovery plan, which is going to our West of England Joint Committee in a couple of weeks' time. This is the vision that overlays that plan. But we're seeing this very much as a first phase, because things are changing so rapidly and things will continue to change, and therefore whatever we do needs to be responsive and flexible as well. But we think there's a real opportunity to build back strongly in the region. We went into the pandemic with lots of strengths, and they're going to be absolutely vital to how we recover. But we're not being complacent either. This has thrown a spotlight on some of those significant challenges that have been around for many years around inclusivity, but also the challenge of climate change as well, and how we respond to that. So it's very much a plan that looks to build on our strengths, but also recognise where there are significant challenges we need to focus on as well. So if you move to the next slide. So an attempt to put a plan on a page is always difficult, and this probably looks quite busy. So what I would say is, don't worry necessarily about the detail at this point, but please do go and have a look at the plan after this meeting. But just to say, the structure of it, the task force wanted to have 5 principles for recovery, and those are the things that you can see at the top of the screen. And in short, it was about rebuilding business, but with a particular focus on helping business find a sustainable pathway to recovery. Clearly getting people back into jobs, going from an economy with 2% to 5% unemployment over a period of 6 months is significant, and we expect that to climb further still. So a real effort on how we get people back into jobs, but also into training and retraining opportunities as well. Strengthening inclusion. You know, the impact of COVID, as we know, has been disproportionate on certain groups and certain parts of our economy, and therefore our plan needs to be responsive to that, and we need to think of ways of reaching out and building local capacity to respond in an effective way. The green recovery, this is about supporting growth and a low carbon model of growth, but there's also things that we can do to decarbonise our economy as well. So green recovery, a really important principle that kind of runs across all of this alongside inclusion. And then finally, renewing places. And there has been significant impact on places. As we know, we're working in a completely different world at the moment, a virtual world, a hybrid world. And it's had real pressure, it's brought real pressure for town city centres, for high streets, for rural areas as well. So as we develop our recovery, we need to think about how those places need to adapt and innovate to be successful going forward. And there are a number of strategic programs that we've set out in the recovery plan, which you can see on this slide. And I won't pick them out, but just on the business side, we see, you know, working, and good to see reference to many initiatives in the previous presentation, a real opportunity to enhance our support to business at the moment of of huge difficulty for companies, and a really coordinated approach across the region is going to be incredibly helpful, simplifying access and making sure the support that's available is the right support and businesses can tap into that. But we also need to focus on those strategic drivers as well, around inward investment, around trade and innovation as well, because those are the things that are going to help us get growth back into our economy. So as well as clearly need to focus on short-term pressures and support people and businesses affected, we also need to be thinking into the future as well about our recovery and renewal and what we need to be in place to have a sustainable recovery. So if you could go to the next slide, please. As well as having a number of actions, short, medium and long term, for the plan to have real teeth, we need to be aiming towards something as well. So we've set out that by 2025, we'll have achieved a number of things around enhanced support to businesses, around investment in innovation, job creation, and training and skills placements. So how are we going to do this? In reality, it'll be through a range of things, but importantly, it needs to be done. It needs to be done in partnership. It needs to be done collectively because we're stronger together in terms of driving action. But we also need to make sure what we do, we place people at the heart of these initiatives as well. So it's really responsive to that need and the issues that they're facing. And we will clearly be able to use existing investments and pivot in existing investments, but we should also be making the case to government for additional resource, devolution and funding to drive forward the recovery, because the scale of the challenge is significant. And whilst we can do a certain amount of good things with the resources we have available at the moment, it's clear that we're going to need more as well. So making the case to government, a really strong, cohesive voice is going to be a very key part of our recovery plan. If you turn to the next slide, please. Just wanted to very quickly give a sense of some of the activity that's been developed in parallel, because the coming together of the plan is clearly significant, but the issues are now. So we've mobilised a significant amount of resource, and it was good to see reference to Thrive at Work West in the previous set. But we put in place through the Growth Hub an enhanced offer around listening to what businesses need and putting that sort of support in place, like trading better online, financial resilience, partnering up with key network organisations and experts to make sure that we can get support to businesses that's really needed at the right time. So there's a whole package of things on the Growth Hub that's available now, free to businesses to access. And alongside that, we've introduced some grant programs as well, working with Business West around a small grants program at the moment with particular focus on tourism and hospitality, and a business innovation fund. And the first wave of that closed last week. And we've seen some really positive interest in that and some really interesting ideas for building back better through that fund. So if you go to the next slide, conscious of time, I just wanted to flag a couple of other things. Redundancies are clearly happening. Whilst we haven't yet seen a massive surge, I think the tailoring off of furlough will have an impact. So we need to be able to scale up and respond to that. So we have put in place a rapid response team working across multiple partners in the region to work with businesses that are looking to make redundancies or actually making redundancies to see how we can support. And that's been channeled through our Growth Hub, working with partners to broker that support effectively. It is available to companies before they make redundancies, so there is an opportunity to try and prevent them and support companies before that. But when they do happen, it's also about providing support to the individual as well, around retraining, around coaching and other support. And there's lots of good support out there, but it's not always clear and accessible to the individual. So this service is looking to package that up and make it much more accessible to people. Alongside that, we're going to launch a talent retention platform, a business-to-business platform to help companies and keep talent in the region and ensure that people can find employment in sectors and in other parts of the economy. So next slide, please. Just wanted to flag that we've launched this week a programme called Workforce for the Future. Again, a multi-partnership approach, so working with Business West, working with the FE sector, UE and others to, again, provide support to small businesses at a really difficult time around their skills planning, around retention of talent, around retention of people, and helping them to plan over a very, very difficult time. So this is a first phase, and it will be effectively a regional skills small business brokerage service working across partners to provide dedicated support to companies, advice, expert advice. And we're looking to launch a phase 2 in a couple of months' time, which will be a call for geographically focused or sectorally based projects which complement this core service. So more information about that to come. But this service is live this week and available to businesses, so please do share that. And I think my final slide next, I realise I've taken a few minutes more. It was just again to flag, as part of pulling the plan together, we wanted to put in place some immediate tangible action as well. So to catalyse some of the programmes we've identified in the recovery plan, we're setting up a regional recovery fund to do that. And on this slide, you can just see some of the things that we're looking to do in that, with that fund. A big focus on digital skills investment. Clearly, there's a big need there. And we have some really significant assets in the region, like our Institute of Coding, Institute of Technology, which we can draw upon. But we need to take an approach which looks at the full spectrum around basic digital skills and even access to digital skills, and also medium to higher level digital skills. So that's something that will come forward alongside various other things to support businesses, expansion of our low carbon challenge fund, an additional small business resilience grant, and then to respond to some of the challenges coming out of the inclusion and the renewing places themes, a community recovery fund we're looking to launch, and some work to rethink high streets, to think of a vision for high streets in the future, and to test some really innovative ways of helping those to adapt and be sustainable going forward. So there was a lot in there, I recognise, but I just wanted to give you a flavour. But please do have a look at the recovery plan, which has much more detail about it. I'm happy to take any questions at the end. Thanks, Richard.
Great. Stephen, thank you ever so much. And thank you. You got through a lot of content there very, very properly. So thank you so much for that. And as you rightly say, there is a lot of work with a lot of contribution from many stakeholders across the city region. So thank you for sharing that with us. So it's now with real pleasure that I want to introduce Thangam Debbonaire, our MP for Bristol West, and also the Shadow Secretary of State for Housing. So Thangam, you're going to just, I think, look to the future and just think about the region's future and how the recovery is going to align to that, and your thoughts and views. So without further ado, Thangam, over to you.
Well, thank you, Richard, for that kind introduction. I'm touched, though a little nervous at your faith that I can decide what the future is. I'm not sure that that's possible. I think when I was writing my notes for this morning, I had a mixture of emotions, because I feel like in the West Country, we've got incredibly talented people. We've got some of the most wonderful organisations to take on the challenges of today and tomorrow. And I want to be able to say to you that I feel, and I can say this because I am a politician, I want to be able to say to you that I have complete faith that the government recognises the skills, qualities and opportunities that we in the West Country want to take hold of. My personal feeling and my political feeling is a mixture. I think that last week's Chancellor's announcement had some good stuff in it, including some stuff which the opposition had been calling for, but I felt as though there were also some missed opportunities which I'm worried about for our future as a region. I wanted to hear an understanding that jobs that are currently unviable do have a long-term future. I didn't want to hear the words, I can't save every job, without the second half of the sentence, which needed, in my view, to say, but most jobs can be saved in the long term, and this is what I'm going to do about it. Or those jobs which I think are no longer viable, here's what I'm going to do. And I felt like that wasn't taken hold of. Doesn't mean we give up. It means that we will just have to work even harder, I think, as a region and as city and regional leaders to fill in those gaps. I want to hear from government that the government understands that our tourism industry is a massive bringer of economic benefits to the region, that our cultural sector, likewise, this morning some of you will have heard about the troubles that our zoos sector is having. And that's, in my constituency of Bristol, that is a massive problem that our zoos are struggling. I want to hear that we are going to bring together different challenges and try to solve them in the recovery from the COVID economic crisis. But I think it's difficult, and I just felt we needed to acknowledge the fact that, upbeat though we all want to be every day, I think these are difficult times, and I think it's important just to be honest about that. I think it's difficult to know from day to day. Even here, I'm in Parliament, and I find it difficult enough even in Parliament to know from day to day what's coming. So I can imagine that that's also true for people on this call, businesses, regional leaders who've got to try and plan for 3-5 year cycles, and it's difficult to know what's in the 3-5 week cycle. So I just wanted to share that with you, I do think there are then ways of looking at hope. I think we need an approach in the West Country which recognises that we're going to have to try and solve the broken housing system, which it is broken for many parts of the region, not everywhere, but many parts of it, the climate crisis, the challenge and benefits of digitisation, what that means for jobs, but also what it means for consumers, which is in the long run some really good things. And I think there are enormous numbers of businesses in our region who have, I refuse to use the word opportunity because I don't think COVID's an opportunity. I think it's a catastrophe. But I think there are businesses who've managed to repurpose in the course of the crisis and have been able to, sometimes by just virtue of sheer luck of what their business happened to be able to repurpose and do things in a different way. And I think others that haven't deserve our support, and we're going to need to challenge government and each other to fill in some of the training gaps, for instance. So when the Chancellor says, I can't save every job, in my view, the second half of the sentence needs to say, and therefore, this is the training strategy that I want to see, I want every region to be working on for how we bridge from here to here. I think that the climate crisis is going to need, if we're going to reach net carbon zero by even 2050, I'd like it to be sooner, but let's say we still stick to 2050, we need to be investing in the training now that puts people in those jobs, that can retrofit our homes, that can invest in the renewable energy and start to turn everybody's home into a home that is warm and safe and affordable to fuel, because that would also help us with the individual economic catastrophes that are ahead for many, many people. I think that we have the potential in the West to take that challenge on. I really do. I think we've got a phenomenal amount of talent. We've got world-beating universities. Sorry to use that phrase, world-beating. I think it's a bit hackneyed, but I genuinely think our universities are. I think we've got some of the best creative talent in the country. And I think that we can do this, but I think it's going to be tough. So what I would like us to do together and how I'd like us to work together is my position in Labour's, in the opposition's shadow cabinet, we have a constitutional role. We are required by the constitution to challenge the government to do the best they can, but we're doing that in a constructive way. I want the government to succeed. I really do. And that's not a normal thing for an opposition politician to say, but I genuinely do, because everybody's jobs, everybody's health, everyone's business is on the line here. So when I stand up and I take to Shadow Cabinet the needs of the West Country as well as in my portfolio, which is housing, the phrase recover jobs, retrain workers and rebuild business, what I'm going to need from all of you is that open and honest and constructive and sometimes challenging dialogue where you say to me, well, this is what I need, this is what I need you to ask for, and you're also able to say to me, but the benefit of that is I will be able to secure X number of jobs if I just have some help with this bit of training or this bit of capital investment. I hope enough of you who are in my constituency know that I will never give up fighting for that. But I think across the whole of the West Country, we've got some really good MPs and different parties who are willing to fight for the jobs and businesses nationally and work with organisations locally to make sure we've got the different building blocks that we need for a really sustainable recovery. I want to finish on this note. I live in the West Country because I really love it. I think it's one of the best parts of the world to live in. And I want us to see that that's what's bringing us together. I feel that when I'm on this call, I want us to be able to convey that to the people around us, because what I'm seeing in my post bag, and I'm sure councillors who are on this call and other MPs are getting the same, is a real mixture from people of despair and hopelessness, as well as ideas for how things could be different. And this isn't a party political point to say that I think we, the people on this call, can are going to have to address the despair and hopelessness. We can't pretend it's not there, but it's part of our job as leaders to make sure that we're capturing some of those great ideas for how we can actually make sure that the West Country is not just the greatest place in the country to grow up, but it's also the greatest place in the country to grow old, and that in between, people's talents are really used. It's going to be tough. I can't see any other way around admitting that it is going to be tough over the next 6 months. But I think that there's a group of people in the West Country and a group of organisations who can help build the better West Country that I know we all want.
Thangam, thank you ever so much. That was just super. It was really nice to sort of bring that whole construct of hope forwards. I think actually absolutely right. So many people across the region are doing, you know, as much as absolutely possible to make sure that we've got the right building blocks in place to be able to, you know, move forwards. But actually, it's that sort of sense of creating the right environment for people to feel that hope, and how we will act together to bring those different building, you know, to those different aspects is so important. So thank you so much. And you're absolutely right. Actually, dealing with the cross-political divides and coming together is vitally important. And I think, you know, we all have a part to play in that, in bringing the positives and also making sure that we do our bit to support. And as you rightly say, it's not just the pandemic that's a big challenge, but the climate change crisis and creating the right environment for, you know, our disadvantaged communities to be able to thrive continue to be incredibly important work for us all to attend to create that fairness for all as well, which we know is important for the business community. So thank you very much for that. We have time now to open up the floor for questions to all of those who are who've spoken today. I have perhaps one specifically that's come in. We have a couple of people who've opened up. So either put your questions into the chat or raise your hands electronically or shout up. But in the meantime, just to get the ball rolling, and hang on, it's a question that you might just be able to help us with. And it came in from Marty Burgess, who's one of our members, but also a partner at Bevan Britain. We know that the hospitality sector is particularly challenged at the moment, and there's a sense of, you know, what can we do to sort of work through the channels to lobby government to get the support that we think our vital sector needs. I wonder, Thangam, whether you might have a view on that.
I do. I mean, I don't think, as I said before, I think there were things in the Chancellor's statement last week that can help some parts of the hospitality sector, but for a large chunk of the hospitality, entertainment, nightlife sector across the West Country, I think there's a real genuine feeling of anxiety, and a completely understandable one. And I share that anxiety because thousands of jobs depend on them. And so I think the arguments you can be making is to push the Chancellor as a network, as a group of organisations, to push the Chancellor on this understanding of the word viable, because businesses who are viable in the long run need some help to get from here to there. I know no business in the West Country wants to put people's lives at risk. I know that people are going to cooperate with health restrictions because of people's health, but it's not fair for people to be asked to put their own business's economic future on the line, and thousands and thousands of jobs as well, without some understanding of the fact that when we get to here, which please let us be there soon, when we get to here, which is there's a vaccine, there's better treatments, we're able to cope more, we don't have to have the constant risk of a short-term lockdown locally or nationally or other restrictions that are making it so hard for our nightlife and entertainment industry and hospitality wider industry to survive. We need government to understand that this bit is really, really important, because those jobs once gone will be really hard to get back. And that's a swathe of our region's economy. So I think as a network, I think there's a really important argument to be making there. And there is a WECA, a West of England Combined Authority, all-party group. So most MPs in the region are involved in that. But I think direct to government, it is really important to cut that through to BEIS, Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and to the Chancellor. Unfortunately, we're not going to have the comprehensive spending review, it looks like, which is a bit of an alarm for, I think, quite a lot of us.
Indeed, and I know that through a multitude of channels, actually, we've shared the priorities into government already, and how that plays out whether it's for 1 year or beyond, will be really vital for us to understand in the coming months or weeks, should I say, Thangam?
Yeah, and to make the arguments about how the difference between having a functioning test, track and trace system and not, what difference that's making to businesses. It's really important to get that collective voice, I think, as Business West, as networks, as WECA, you know, all of the different networks that people are involved in. I think it's really important to get that collectively across, not just fighting business by business by business.
Well, that was interesting. We just had a LET board meeting this morning, and the LET board chair, Steve West, was making exactly that point, actually, Thangam. So I think that's important. I think my other reflection, actually, in respect to the point you've just made, is that actually, as a region, we've got to do even more to make sure that we're engaging with key stakeholders, whether that's people like Homes England or intergovernment departments, to make sure that those organisations or those departments are really clear on how we work as a region, what our asks are, the criticality of what that means for us in terms of helping our economy to thrive. And so again, we've got a role to play, I think, through various different channels to help to make those connections really importantly. Thank you. Has anybody, I'm just having a little look, has anybody raised their hand? Step in if you have. I can't see any at the moment. So what I might do, actually, whilst we've got one or two other people on the line, so I know Louise Mitchell is on the call, and I wonder, Louise, whether you might just share just a few words around this week's brilliant announcement in terms of the work that you've been doing at what is now Bristol Beacon. So, Louise, I wonder whether you might just share with us a little bit of what's happened and what that means for the organisation going forwards, if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, Richard. Happy to do that
Thank
briefly.
you.
I think probably people will have noticed that we changed the name of our concert building and in fact our whole organisation last week from our various component parts, which are Colston Hall and Bristol Plays Music, to Bristol Beacon. We had great support from Mayor Marvin Rees and Councillor Craig Cheney on this, both of whom took part in the event, which I think went about as well as it could have done. Of course, we recognise that not everybody will be happy to lose the old name, but there was a widespread support throughout the city, and I think it's fair to say throughout the world. So I was immensely proud of the Bristol Beacon team who have worked through furlough, or at least, you know, during the days when they were not on furlough, I should say very carefully. It's been a huge team effort, and for us the very lovely thing was being in the building producing an event, which is what we do, and it's what we haven't been able to do. And it was actually quite tough going back to our little rooms on our own afterwards and reflecting on what we've done. But don't want to go on and on about this, but it was a huge moment for us, and I think an important moment for the city. What we also did is, you know, we didn't just change the name, and we didn't just give an update on the transformation of our building. We did also issue what we're calling a transformation promise, which is the way in which we're going to work as an organisation and have started to work to make our organisation more inclusive, more thoughtful, towards everybody. I think the way that I sum it up is all kinds of music for all kinds of people, and that's what we're there to do. So anybody is very welcome to email me if they want any further information. And there's a lot of stuff on the Bristol Beacon website as well.
Louise, thank you ever so much for sharing that with us, and absolutely, I think it's been really pleasing to see that it's leading to your longer term transformation and how that, you know, and what that means around values. So brilliant work, and thank you for bringing that forwards. I've just seen quite a technical question in the chat box from Andrew, which is quite related to some specifics around supply chains and how we might work with the public sector. And I know Craig Cheney is on the line, and I wonder whether, Craig, you might just have a quick look at the question in the chat, and I don't know whether there's any views in terms of the work that the City Council are doing, as an example, in terms of how we're linking to ethical supply chain work. I know from our own work with our Vice President, Jay Chakrabarti, you know, we've been really clear that we've got to embrace the whole issue of the Modern Slavery Act, actually, and that we need to see ethical supply chains in the way in which we all operate. But Craig, briefly, I don't know whether the council are doing any work specifically around supply chain legislation that you might be able to just give Andrew a quick update on.
Yes, we are. I mean, obviously this is a sort of a move-in picture at the moment. So we already had a number of policies within the council anyway around modern slavery and so on. So we had a number of, we already expect levels of ethics or ethical behaviour within our supply chain, but there is a piece of work looking at it. I can't give much of an update because I don't know how far we've got with it yet, but I can do it at a future meeting if that will help.
Yeah, thank you. I think we can pick that up. Matt Chris is probably on. I think it's on the line as well, so we can have a little look at some of the policy work that we're doing a bit more generally, which would be great. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to. I know the real lack of questions today, so I'm going to randomly ask one of our other colleagues to come in, and that's Joe Davis. And Joe, I'm just thinking about the work that the Combined Authority doing around regional spatial planning, and I know that there's a lot of work that needs to evolve around the economic land, employment land study and bits and pieces. I just wonder whether you might, for 2 minutes, perhaps just give your thoughts as to what's happening from a spatial planning perspective.
Well, thanks for that and for the pre-warning on it, Richard. Always appreciate it. I mean, I think there's a couple of things, isn't there? You know, we know the challenges that we're going to have in the economy over the next 2 years as this all plays out, and the very risk that we have in these scenarios is that we don't plan properly for us returning to whatever the new norm is. And actually, if we are going to be a resilient Southwest region, we do have to plan carefully in terms of our land uses, and we do have to ensure that actually we've got a robust employment strategy and a sufficient amount of employment land in the right locations that can be delivered to meet market requirements. And that is something that, you know, there's a huge amount of work being done on that through the West of England partnership, and I think that, you know, this group is really critical in delivering on that. And you know, we are also seeing some real winners, you know, as we were just touching on within this market. You know, the logistics and distribution centre is a critical piece for us, and the Bristol region is very, very important in creating that spoke and wheel piece for that distribution. Be that through the strategic highway network, or be that through the international networks of the port or the airport. And we've got to be really clear about how we work through this. And I think that there's some really encouraging work to be done on that. We've got to put behind us where we were in terms of the spatial plan, and move forward working with the right authorities and with the voice of Business West to ensure that we're getting the right pieces in the right places. So I think we should take encouragement on that. But again, I think as you know, Richard, you know, the active encouragement of people in this forum responding to that is really critical.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you, and apologies for coming in like that. But we really appreciate that. And through the work through our policy, transport and planning policy group, there's a really good forum for members to engage through that forum. So thank you very much. I know, John.
Just pick up. Actually, if anybody wants to reach out to me on here who feels that they don't know enough about that, please come back to me after this call, and I'm more than happy to feed that into that working group.
Great, thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate that. I'm just going to bring John Smith in briefly. So John, as Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, perhaps a quick update around the work of Avon Somerset Police, please.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that, Richard, and thank you, Thangam. It was helpful to get that update on what's going on in Westminster. I know you're in regular contact with Sue and been working closely on a number of things, but I suppose just to summarise some of the key things we've been grappling with here locally, I think the three big themes we've explored on these meetings and in many others over the last few weeks are probably uncertainty, as you said, and the challenges of an ever-changing regulatory framework. I can't quite recall what the change in rules is this week, and I'm not alone in that, I know, but we've certainly been grappling with most recently the 10 p.m. curfew with slightly mixed feelings. I think there's some positives about that, but some challenges as well. It certainly brings a lot of people onto the streets at the same time, which feels a bit counterintuitive. but we're just working our way through the rule of six and also the idea of marshals to help police with enforcement, which I think is a positive idea, and we're trying to progress here locally. But it is quite uncertain and ever changing, and I have to say the one city partnership approach that Marvin and colleagues and Craig and colleagues have set up has left us in a really good place to respond quickly and collaboratively to those challenges, which is great. The second theme I just wanted to flag was potential divisiveness in communities. We've had very differing views to some of our policing operations around whether we should be enforcing more or enforcing less, or doing more of one type of thing or another. And it has been, whilst demand for police dropped off in the early days, it has really rebounded back up again now, and is quite a challenging environment to grapple with those different demands. So there are a lot of different views out in communities about what approach should be taken, and I think it is a responsibility of leaders and all of us to sort of try and keep communities working together. And I think there are some opportunities as well, but that is a challenge. And the third thing is vulnerability. One of the key things we talked about, and I know, Thangam, you talked with Sue about around issues like domestic abuse, but it is really important, I think, from our point of view, that young people are able to go to school, and it's a really positive thing that the universities are coming back. That does bring challenges. We met with the Vice Chancellors of the two great universities that the city is lucky to have. And there's an awful lot of work that's gone on to prepare for the students to come back. They're really not going to come back in full until sort of next week and the week after, as UE's students come back. So that, I think it is important that we're all prepared. That is going to bring challenges for us. There are going to be more turbulence ahead, but I think the joint work that we've done and the collaborative approach we've taken is going to leave us as well placed as we can be to address those. Thanks very much.
John, thank you ever so much. Some really helpful updates there. Thank you. And I just wonder, actually, I'm just looking at the chat. Thangam, I know you just dropped a quick note back in actually around the issue of homelessness, and perhaps that's a theme for a future meeting, but I don't know if there's anything you would like to just perhaps touch on in response.
My concern is that I think that the Everyone initiative for people who are street homeless was just a really good example of great collaboration between local government, national government, private sector and voluntary organisations, and I think it's a real credit to the local councillors across the region that they're trying to make sure that nobody ends up back on the streets. My concern that I raised in the chat is what I see is a possible expansion of hidden homelessness and affecting people who perhaps have never had to claim benefits before this year, or who are ineligible. If you are a small business owner or self-employed and you were saving up for your tax bill, you may have been thereby disqualified from claiming universal credit. And over the course of the next few months, I think that will mean a lot of people who are going to struggle, who may still be in work but have got significantly reduced incomes. Either their business is reduced income, or they've lost their job, or their job is on reduced pay, particularly as we come to the end of the furlough scheme. So I have a concern. I don't have the answer yet. I'm trying to work on it as what that's going to look like in our region. Is it going to mean families moving in together? Is it going to mean more multi-generational families? I'm not sure at the moment, but I think there is an issue for employers, because those people who are still in work, when we're told to go and work from home, increasingly we are working from home in conditions that are perhaps less than ideal for some people, both from mental health terms, but also from digital and internet. So I think there's a whole bundle of questions which are about possible drift towards hidden homelessness for sometimes quite, people who had hitherto had quite good jobs, and also a drift towards the home being used for things indefinitely that it's going to struggle to manage, especially if more schools are sent home. I know in my patch we've got some classes who've been sent home, and that's difficult, tough on parents.
Indeed. Thank you ever so much. I'm just conscious that we've just slightly overrun the first hour of the formal meeting. No, that's fine. That's my chairing, not quite on top of it today. But I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of our speakers, Thangam, Stephen and Sally. Your insights and reflections are really helpful, really important for us, and to those who've come in, Louise, John, Craig and others, thank you very much. So we now have the end of our formal part of the meeting, and I think that for those who would like to stay on, and we can just explore some of the issues a little bit further, or indeed have a little bit more of a social conversation, should I say. We are happy to hang around for another half an hour, but for everybody else who needs to leave, thank you very much for your time and thank you for your ongoing support. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.